All right, so in this video, we'll be covering the last two types of tricks we can make standard form categorical propositions perform, and that would be obversion and contraposition. But before we get to either one of those, we need to at least get some grasp on this concept of a term complement, right, as you see here. So, as the bullet point indicates, the term complement is everything that something is not given a particular context. So, in other words, let's take the term chairs, right? The term complement of chairs would be non-chairs. And I'll just say, in many cases, the term complement will simply be to add the word non to whatever that term is. Like we see here with the next example. Cars. Okay, the term complement of cars, in most cases, right, would be non-cars. Now, if you already know that you're dealing with a group of vehicles, let's say, some of which are cars and others of which are trucks, right? So you have this group of vehicles and you know they're just cars and trucks in that group. Then, in a sense, the term complement of cars would be trucks, right? In that, we would say, in that context. Just understand, I'm not going to be trying to trick anybody with any weird contexts or anything like that. So again, in many cases, and certainly as I've indicated here, if you have the term cars, the term complement of cars would just be non-cars, since we don't know if we're just talking about cars versus trucks or what have you. However, having said all that, there are times when you don't just simply use the word non to make a term complement. So if we have inefficient people, right, the term complement of that would be efficient people, okay? So inefficient people, efficient people. If you had the term efficient people, then the term complement of that would be inefficient people, right? So the word inefficient implies a context. You're talking about the inefficient people versus the ones who get stuff done, right? The efficient people. What you would definitely not want to do here is say inefficient non-people, right? Because you're not going to typically be comparing inefficient people with inefficient non-people. That's not really a plausible context. Also, you don't want to write for the term complement here non-inefficient, right? Because there's a simpler way to say that, efficient people, right? So sometimes, again, you might wonder, gaseous things, what's the term complement of that? Well, that would be, again, now, non-gaseous things. Because, there's gas, matter comes in the form of gas, liquid, solid, and so forth. So there's not just one other option here. At the same time, if your subject term or your predicate term, and you're taking the term complement of this, if it were people who are not teachers, okay, I hope that would suggest itself, people who are teachers, right? So if you have people who are not teachers, you would compare them to people who are teachers in most contexts. So this is the idea of a term complement, and what we now are going to do with that is apply that to the trick called obversion, or when we're asked to obvert a statement. Okay, so to perform obversion on a statement, you want to change the quality of the original statement but not the quantity of it. All right, so that's right here. Change the quality, but not the quantity. And then you also replace the predicate term with its term complement. Okay, so this is of the three different tricks we're performing here in this section. This is probably the most difficult, but even so, it's not that difficult. So quality, remember, is affirmative or negative. And quantity, remember, is universal or particular. So when you obvert a statement, you want to keep the original statement's quantity, that is how much, the same, right? So if it's a universal statement, keep it universal. If it starts off as a particular statement, keep it particular. But change it from affirmative to negative or vice versa. So to take an example here, right, we have all hot dogs are cholesterol-containing foods. And so the quality here, right, all A statements, the quality, as we learned already, is affirmative, so we need to make it negative. We know it's a universal statement, all is universal, so we need to keep it universal, so we need to think of the negative universal statement, and so what we're going to end up with is no, right, because that's negative, and it's still universal. And then the good news here is that once we figure that out, hot dogs, right? The subject term stays the same, no hot dogs. And then we need to get to, we have are, because the copula with the quantifier no is always are. Then we need to take the term complement of cholesterol-containing foods. So you've got your cholesterol-containing foods, and then you might be tempted to say, well, your non-cholesterol-containing foods, but, right, thanks to, American marketing genius, we have a better phrase for this, right? Cholesterol-free. So, we have obverted the statement. All hot dogs are cholesterol-containing foods. We've made it negative, but kept it universal, and we've replaced the predicate term with its term complement. We end up with no hot dogs are cholesterol-free foods, as you can see here also on the slide. So, reflect for a moment on that. That statement that we've just come up with means the same thing as the original, doesn't it? Right? If all hot dogs are cholesterol-containing foods, that means that no hot dogs are cholesterol-free foods. And in fact, as we see here in this last bullet point, every single standard form categorical proposition will end up logically equivalent when it is obverted. But we don't need to, take my word for it here. We can, and you will on the exam, do Venn diagrams to establish this as well. And so we have here for the original statement, hot dogs and cholesterol-containing foods as our subject and predicate terms. And it says all hot dogs are cholesterol-containing foods, and so we shade that in, right, to force any hot dogs there might be into the middle area, making them cholesterol-containing foods. And then our new statement here, our obverted statement, again, we have H and C. So now we have no, so that's good, right? We're going to shade. We simply have to shade where hot dogs and cholesterol-free foods overlap. Now, the challenge here, right, is to remember this is this right-hand circle here. This C here stands for cholesterol-containing foods. It doesn't stand for cholesterol-free foods. So everything inside that circle is a cholesterol-containing food. Where are the cholesterol-free foods, right? Because we need to think about where they overlap the hot dogs. Well, we can help, I think it can help, if the cholesterol-containing foods are inside that circle, then the cholesterol-free foods are everywhere outside of it. And so you can do this, right? You can indicate this when you're working these out on the exam. And so here we now need to ask, okay, where do the hot dogs overlap the cholesterol-free foods? And you can see where these blue dots are, right? Right here, they overlap the hot dogs. And so we want to shade that in to basically represent the information in that obverted statement. And lo and behold, the two pictures match. And so, yes, indeed, they do mean the same thing. They are logically equivalent, in other words. All right. One more here is contraposition. And in this one, we've got a sort of a combo move that we're going to make. We're going to switch the subject and predicate terms, and then we're going to replace each of those terms with their term complements. So it's kind of a combination of conversion and then sort of part of what we did in obversion here. So to illustrate, we have no fiends are garbage haulers, right? No fiends are garbage haulers. And so do this in 2 steps is what I'd recommend. So this is going to be the first step. We get no garbage haulers are fiends. And then, right, after you do that, first step, just flipping them, that's conversion. Now we need to take the term complements, and so now you can see where we end up. Let me underline that. No non-garbage haulers are non-fiends, right? So garbage haulers becomes, the term complement is non-garbage haulers, and fiends becomes non-fiends. And so that's the contrapositive of the original statement. Now, do they mean the same thing? Well, what we've done is we've contraposed an E statement, and as we can see here at the bottom, E and I statements are not logically equivalent when contraposed, but again, don't take my word for it. Let's find out for ourselves. So let's go ahead and do no fiends are garbage haulers down here. Fiends and garbage haulers. No means we shade where the both terms overlap, so that's in the middle here. And then we're going to do our other Venn diagram here. where we're going to label it fiends and garbage haulers because we have to label them the same way every time, regardless of what the new subject and predicate terms might be. And so now we get no. So no, that's good news. We're going to shade where the two terms overlap. So what are the two terms? Non-garbage haulers, where are they? Well, they're going to be out here, right? Because the garbage haulers are inside the circle. And then we also have non-fiends. Well, we know where the fiends are. They're inside this circle. Outside the circle, we get the non-fiends. And so we simply need to shade where the two things overlap. And if you use this sort of dotted line, approach, you can see that, they overlap where? Over here, and over here, and over here, and everywhere, right? In fact, and so, you don't need to take, too much time shading in the entire universe, because that would take too long, but you can see what you would shade, and you can see that these two pictures don't match at all, and so they're not logically equivalent when they're contraposed. That is an E statement. Okay, but what about another example here? So let me go ahead and erase here, clean this up a bit. And we're going to look at the second two examples here. Some patient people are not successful people. And then we're going to contrapose that statement. And so we'll see what that looks like. And again, I really recommend when you're asked to do contraposition, at least at the beginning, to do this in 2 steps. Okay, convert it first, flip the subject and predicate terms, and then take the term complements. So some patient people are not successful people. The first thing I would do is turn this into some successful people are not, right? There's the copula. That does not change in this. And they are not what? Patient people. So that's just the first step. Some successful people are not patient people. Now we are going to take the term complements of each of these terms. And so we do end up with some unsuccessful people are not impatient people, right? Successful people, you don't want to say non-successful people because we have a better way to say that, unsuccessful people. And you certainly don't want to say successful non-people because what are we talking about there? Who knows? Patient people, the term complement of that is not non-patient people because you have a better term, impatient people. So that's where we get unsuccessful people and impatient people. Now that original statement was an O statement, of course, and as we see here right below, it's supposed to be logically equivalent when we contrapose it, and you might be able to see that for yourself, just reflecting on it, but we don't have to because we can do the Venn diagrams to make sure. So let's do the Venn diagram for the original statement. And so we have patient people and then successful people. And so some is an X. And that X is in the patient people circle, but it's not in the successful people circle. And so we put it there. And we're going to compare that with patient people, successful people, this one. So we again have the quantifier some, so we just need to find where we're going to put our X. And that X is an unsuccessful person. So that X has got to be outside this successful people circle somehow, or somewhere, I should say. Now, what else do we know about that X? It's not impatient. Well, inside this circle are the patient people. If you're not impatient, guess what? You're patient. So we put our X right in there, right? Because that's where the unsuccessful people overlap the not impatient people, or in other words, the patient people. And lo and behold, the two pictures match, which is what we expected, because an O statement is logically equivalent when contraposed. All right? So we'll just cover a few more little quirks or twists here in how this gets done in the next video, but basically that's how this works in terms of conversion, obversion, and contraposition.